For those who are politically wise, a show about the lives of Christians in Ohio involved with politics. Introducing your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
Greetings, my fellow patriots, saints, and sinners. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. At the end of the show, there will be a blessing. Don't miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
To some people, they're just a pet, a dog or a cat. But to you, they're part of your family. They've shared your lives, provided companionship, and given unconditional love. And just like when a human family member passes on, you want your four-legged family members to be treated with dignity. Baker, Hazel, and Snyder Funeral Home and Crematory has been caring for families since 1941 and now offers the same level of service for your pets at Snyder Pet Crematory. Call 274-1151, 274-1151.
The opinions and statements on this show belong to those who give them. The rest of the show belongs to Thomas Wise Words, all rights reserved. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. I'm Reverend Thomas Wise. The show is called Politically Wise. I am in Senator Tim Schaffer's office today. Tim, tell my readers who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. It's a real honor to have you here. Tim Schaffer, State Senator from the 31st District, and before I was in the Senate, I was 6 years in the Ohio House of Representatives, coming out of Fairfield County. Live in Lancaster, and went to Mount Union College for my undergraduate education. And my dad, as we have talked, Pastor Wise, was a Methodist minister, United Methodist minister, and he was in the ministry for 49 years. And really had a great experience in that upbringing. I grew up in the church, grew up in helping out with church, helping out with all kinds of aspects of the church, doing church work, and it was a big part of my life.
What committees what responsibilities do you have here?
Sure. Well, the main responsibility I have is I chair Ways and Means Committee, which basically writes or repeals, in some cases repeals tax law. One big example of that is we helped repeal the estate tax, or we call it the death tax, in Ohio a couple years ago. That tax was responsible for destroying a lot of family farms and small family-owned businesses where, with the patriarch passing on, the family that succeeded in ownership of the business or the farm couldn't pay the tax. And it would just drive them into the ground, and they literally would have to sell off the assets of the business or the farm just to pay the tax. So that was a huge anti-family, anti-business, anti-jobs tax that was on the rolls, and we repealed it. So that's a lot of the research we do. We try and figure out how do we do it, what will the impact to the state of Ohio be, what will be the positive impact to Ohioans, and as it turns out, it's going to be a huge positive impact getting rid of that tax. So that's kind of some of the things we do as a Ways and Means Committee.
I see. So, and you've been I've heard you've been called the Dean of the Senate. What is, explain that?
Yeah, and this was a bit of a surprise to me. I'd always heard the term Dean of the Senate, but never knew what it meant or what it was about. It's basically a celebratory role. But for what I call the old dude, the guy or the gal who's been here the longest, you become Dean of the Senate. And in this age of term limits, I became the Dean at 5.5 years. So the deanship, I guess you could say, comes with a big office, a bigger office than I had before. So my staff outvoted me and wanted to move into the bigger office. I like my other office just fine, but the only thing I don't have is a sign out in the hallway, and I keep threatening the State House staff to put a sticky note on there that says Dean of the Senate on it, but I haven't gotten the gumption up to do that yet.
Yeah, well, you've earned that title.
Oh, it took me 5.5 years. 5 years. Before term limits, people would serve here 20 years and it'd still be considered almost a freshman.
Yeah. So what was, and before you got up to the State House, what did you do back home?
I'm an association executive by trade. I run nonprofits, and I kind of stumbled into it 25 years ago out of college, but, it's almost like my dad's profession and your profession. Kind of almost sort of followed in my father's footsteps. Church is a nonprofit, and we do much of the same thing. I've worked for the American Diabetes Association, the Ohio Grocers Association, and for the last 19 years, the Ohio Society of Professional Engineers. And they have a foundation on the side, the Engineers Foundation of Ohio. So do a lot of nonprofit management, fundraising for scholarships and kids programs. And also at the Society of Professional Engineers, we look out for the interests of the professional engineering community in Ohio.
What bills do you have? What's coming up? What's live? What's the hot topic that you're heading up?
Great question. A lot of my background has been in anti-corruption legislation, and then I moved into, you kind of move into vacuums where there's a vacuum of legislation or leadership or a vacuum of something. And years ago, I moved into the sexual predator area, and we found out that, and gosh, this was news to me, we found out that there are a lot of predators online soliciting children and teens. And so we cracked down on that and established some mandatory prison terms for folks that do that. Then, as Ways and Means Chair, I've moved more into tax policy, making sure that we don't have a burdensome tax code here in Ohio, that people can establish a business, they can be an entrepreneur, and not competition is hard enough to try and make a living past or through, but we want to make sure the state of Ohio is not standing in the way. So we've worked a lot on the tax policy, trying to make sure our tax and regulatory policies are effective. Right now, I'm carrying Senate Bill 6, which is an anti-corruption piece of legislation for local fiscal officers of townships and villages and municipalities. And we're making some amendments to that bill, and we might just roll it out to have some more expansive ethics training for elected officials in Ohio, because I see a real need there. I see a great need there. So, we want to make sure the taxpayer money is being used properly and not being embezzled and not being stolen in all kinds of creative ways. And there are a lot of creative thieves out there that get into public office or get near somebody in public office and fleece the taxpayer. So we're cracking down on that with Senate Bill 6.
So interesting. And we will be right back after the break.
Next time you're thinking about beating the train, think again. It takes a typical freight train traveling 50 miles an hour, 1.5 miles to stop. That's nearly 18 football fields. Don't try to beat the train. Ohio's roads can be highways or dieways. The choice is yours. A message from Operation Lifesaver and this station.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. You talk about ethics.
Mm-hmm.
What is where do you get who's your line that rule of thumb you come from? Whose ethics? Who the heck are you? Are you using?
Who's my ethical inspiration?
Yeah, who's your ethical inspiration?
Mom and Dad brought us boys up. It was a household of 3 boys, so we never had any decent furniture or anything. We tore everything up in the house. Kept good care of the parsonage, but we 3 boys, they brought us up real well, and my parents believed they're old agricultural folks from the Depression era, and they believed in spare the rod, you spoil a child, and I still believe that in that kind of psychology in law and order, as well as your ethical behavior. I've even talked to public elected officials, politicians in office, who didn't think there was anything wrong with padding the expense account in their county or their city or wherever they worked. They didn't see anything wrong with that. They thought, well, I work hard for a living, and I work really hard at this job, and blah blah. They come up with all kinds of excuses. Well, it's theft. It's embezzlement, flat out. And I've actually counseled. I've sat down with people like this, elected officials, and counseled with them on this sort of thing. And I get a lot of it too from the nonprofit sector. We have very tight regulations, very stringent regulation on how we collect money, how we earn our money through donations, and how we spend it, and what we do with it. But ultimately, I think a lot of it just comes from my parents. My dad, I followed his lead. He was a very black and white kind of guy, and a great leader, and somebody who he really set the standard for ethical behavior, and modeled a lot after him.
Married still?
Married, yes.
20 kid boys and girls, or
no kids? 2 careers, no kids.
What's your wife do?
She works for the federal government. Lori. Yeah, Lori works for the federal government. So she's a little nervous right now with the government, the federal government politics going on, but as they all are. But I think we'll make it through that. But she is a proud employee of the federal government and works very, very hard at her job. Very proud of her. But yeah, we're both Central Ohio kids. She went to Bloom Carroll High School, and I went to Lancaster High School, and we met working a summer job in the same clothing store.
Really?
Back in college, yes.
So she went to, she went to Mount Union too?
No, she went to Capital.
She went to Capital.
Capital University, and she commuted the whole time. So that was an easy commute from where she lived in Fairfield County, just across the county line. And I went 3.5 hours away, so I had a little bit of a haul every time I came home on the weekends.
Well, tell my listeners about your faith.
Your faith it needs to be an integral part of your work, no matter what kind of work you do. I can't tell you how many times that I have had dilemmas at work, tough decisions to make, and it never ceases to amaze me how the book of Proverbs can give you answers. Even something as simple as that, just pointing to one book in the Bible, one source of wisdom, just incredible. And I think being biblically well read is important. Having the faith in God and Jesus Christ is extremely important, because as long as you know that you have that support system, that you will be making sound decisions in whatever line of work you're in. And when you're in government, you're making a lot of decisions for a lot of other people. If you're a township trustee, it could be a couple thousand people, or it could be 100,000 people. If you're a state legislator, we make decisions every day on behalf of 11.5 million Ohioans. And that's a lot of responsibility that you don't want to take lightly. So you need all the wisdom and all the guidance you can ask for from God, and to make sound decisions and make sure you're doing the job right. That's really how I interact with God and Jesus Christ in my line of work. I always want to make good decisions, sound decisions, and you can't do it on your own. It's the weight of that responsibility is too much to bear. And I can't imagine at the federal level where the stakes are much higher. At the state level, we don't decide on invading countries, or we do have a little bit of play in economic policy that can affect our jobs and affect our economy. At the federal level, and particularly the White House level, the presidential level, that's incredible power. And we definitely need God's help and God's guidance there.
How do you keep your head clear? All the voices up here, and all the lobbyists, and all the people in the party, and people in the opposition party, and lobbyists.
I honestly, it harkens back to one of your first questions. It's related to one of your first questions. This job in politics or in government is a lot like being a minister or a pastor. It's you got to have a thick skin, and you learn. If you don't learn quickly, you learn the hard way not to react immediately and quickly to things. Be judicious. With a little bit of maturity, you realize, I don't need to respond all the time. I don't need to respond quickly. I don't need to respond, in like manner. You got to have a thick skin, and you gotta make sure you're playing the game. Like any athletic coach will tell you, if the other guy's cheating, if he's elbowing you, if he's kicking you or punching you or whatever, don't respond in like manner. You're the one that will get caught, and it won't do you any good. It'll hurt the team. It'll hurt the entire team. So you just you back off a little bit, and with age, I think, comes wisdom. With experience comes wisdom, and I believe that that kind of wisdom is very, very valuable. It's indisposable. And I've had a lot of great mentors throughout my career to help me along with that. People I've sought advice from, and in some cases, I can't think of a good example offhand, but I know I've done this many times where I wanted to react quickly and fiercely on an issue, something going on. I wish I could give you a good example offhand, but And I thought, well, maybe I just ought to run this past somebody first and show them a draft of what I'm writing or tell them what I'm thinking. And my gosh, there's so much value in that. Getting a second set of eyes or a second set of ears on an issue before you really mess up. And, it helps to have good mentors, good friends, people you trust around you to make sure you're making those sound decisions, in addition to seeking guidance from God. And a lot of that guidance you get from God, you find in the Bible. Go to if something's really troubling you, if you got a really tough decision, you're between a rock and a hard place, and it's almost like a non-winnable situation, just open up the Bible. Open up the Bible. There are people in the Bible who have been there before and have survived and thrived. I just can't say enough how important Proverbs is to me. It's amazing the wisdom and especially a proverb you may read today that you read 30, 40 years ago in your youth. You didn't see the wisdom in it. Now you do, because you have a difficult situation to compare it to. It's just amazing.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Tell us about your best day so far in politics.
Best day in politics? Other than Wednesday morning after a successful election. I think actually being able to enact legislation that helps Ohioans. And I think one of those would be an anti-corruption piece of legislation I did 10 years ago, which stiffens the penalties for stealing in office, theft in office. Another one was the internet predator legislation I did about 6 or 7 years ago. A lot of folks said, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get those bills done. But, if you work at it hard enough and talk to enough people and lobby your colleagues hard enough, they come around. They see the wisdom. You might have to make a few changes. And I think the proudest moment in my legislative time here in Columbus certainly was when I had Dad open up the House of Representatives with prayer back in 2000, would have been, I think, 2001. So that was a really proud day, because shortly after that he started declining pretty quickly with Parkinson's disease, and there was no way he would be able to make the trip back. So I actually got him in the permanent record of having opened up prayer, as you have many times.
Yes.
In the Senate.
That's grace.
Yeah, that was probably my proudest moment. That was really cool.
Yes. Tell me about a bad day.
A bad day is when a bill you believe in strongly, you've introduced, you got a bunch of co-sponsors on, and somebody of power and influence finds a flaw with it, and they don't tell you about it, but you read about it in the newspaper one morning. I've had that happen to me, and that's part of the process. Sometimes you think you've got everything put together. And I could do a sports analogy here, but we do sports analogies all day. But you think you've got it all put together. You think you've got A through Z all done, and it's wrapped with a bow on top, ready to go, ready to be passed, and then signed by the governor, and then the wheels just blow off the whole project. And you got to be resilient. You just got to come back and say, okay, I'm going to work at this again. Let's fix the problem and go through the process again.
Does that happen often? Once a year? Once a term?
No, every few years or so.
Every few years.
Probably to me a little more often than most legislators, because I get a lot of ideas from my constituents, and I believe very much in my responsibility to them. I'm here to represent their ideas, and so I have a tendency to introduce a lot of legislation. And I've had bills I've introduced for 10 years now, and it might take that long to finally find the time and the political environment in the state where something will pass. And so you just keep plugging. If you've spent a lot of time and your staff's time working an issue and then the wheels blow off, that's really frustrating. But you know what? There's a purpose for everything. And any time that's happened to me, and it hasn't been a whole lot, but on a couple of bills I've had that happen to me, we actually made the bills better. It was probably a good thing. You don't want anything half-baked going through the legislature and getting signed into law. You want to make sure these are good concepts. So it's all team effort. We may look like we fight and argue in the news media. The news media love to portray it that way sometimes, but we're all colleagues here in Columbus. I wish Washington were a little more collegial like that, but here in Columbus we may disagree vehemently on certain issues, but ultimately we want to help each other get good legislation done.
So how would you recommend someone want to follow in your footsteps? How do they get involved in politics? What is how did you first get involved in politics?
How I first got involved is in order to graduate, I needed to get an internship. So I literally just went to my public officials in Fairfield County in 1984, I guess it was, summer of '84, and knocked on doors. Hey, can I intern with you this summer? And the first door I knocked on didn't even respond. They didn't want anything to do with this kid that wanted to hang out for the summer. The second one was my state representative at that time, Steve Williams. Good, God-fearing man, great family, strong family in Fairfield County. And he said, sure, come on in. And we sat down and talked, and we discovered that we view the world very similarly, both conservatives. And I put this internship together with him. It was free labor for him, so that was a good deal for him, a good deal for me because I got a semester's worth of credit. But really that's what it is you find office holders or candidates that you believe in, people who you agree with on issues, where you see the world the same or very similarly, and you work for them. People sometimes ask me, well, gosh, it must be, you must have dozens of employees out there because we see your yard signs everywhere, and you must have a huge campaign office. And it's like, no, you know what, my campaign office, it's me, my wife, and my parents and my in-laws. That's it. And I remember coming back when I first ran for the Senate in 2006, my wife and I rolled in the driveway the day before election, having done yard signs all night. We rolled in the driveway at sunup. We literally pulled a 24-hour yard sign blitz. And, we have a lot of public support. We got a ton of support out there. But, you don't have so-called staff. You don't have people out there willing to do that hard stuff, stay out all night and do the yard signs and, be back up the next morning ready to go out and knock on more doors. It's pretty brutal. It can be pretty hard. And those candidates are putting everything on the line for us. Go find a candidate you like, you agree with, help them out. They'll need it, they'll appreciate it, and then you'll see firsthand this stuff really gets done by just a handful of people. It's amazing.
Scary sometimes. But it's a lot, you have to outwork your opposition.
You really do. You absolutely do. And I have seen it many, many times where, again, the public thinks there's an army of people out there, and sometimes you have a lot of supporters. I mean, I've had 30 and 40 people in my home before ready to do door-to-door, but there's nothing like your core group of family and close friends to really put you over that line, to put you over the winner's line, to make sure you win that race. And if you get a relationship like that with somebody you believe in, somebody that you know is going to be a good, strong, conservative decision maker with the right value system, I tell you, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before an election, they need you, and they need you badly, and they'll buy you all the pizza you want, all the pizza you can eat, if you'll help them out. And and nobody wants to act like they need that kind of help, but I find that very, very important, because the last thing you want to see happen, and I've had this happen to some friends, they wake up on Wednesday morning and they lost by 6 votes. And then you think, boy, if I'd knocked on one or two more houses' doors, one or two more doors, or if I made 10 more phone calls, I could have convinced 6 people. And you never want to have to say that on Wednesday morning.
So what's next for you?
Well, I'm term limited out of the Senate. It's hard to believe, but next year will be my 8th year in the Ohio State Senate, and I still have ideas. I still have a lot of strong support at home in Fairfield County. Folks that are telling me, because my House representative is also term limited, he can't go past next year. So my supporters are asking me to run for the House again, which I'm going to be doing. As long as I have ideas and creativity and energy, I'm going to be serving somewhere. So I want to make sure that we have good, solid stability in Columbus. With term limits, we get a lot of freshmen in, a lot of very bright. That's another good point about term limits. I didn't care for term limits myself because it has introduced some instability. But on the other hand, on the positive side, we've gotten a lot of very bright people in. And when I came in 12 years ago, I would have been happy supporting my state representative at the time for as long as he wanted the job. But we have executives, retired executives, mid-stage career executives, school teachers, bankers, all kinds of different professions coming in with this term limits doctrine. And it's kind of neat to see all these new faces, fresh faces coming in. But the challenge there is you need some veterans around too who know how the place operates.
You know where the bathrooms are.
Know where the bathrooms are. Yes, I always like to say that.
It's not as easy as we laugh about it, but it's not as easy to find as you think.
That's right. That's right. You probably experienced that. If you're a freshman who's been sitting in a committee for 6 hours straight, that could be a real big issue.
A real big issue. Getting used to sitting in a committee room for 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
How many all-nighters and late-nighters have you pulled in your time here?
I think the latest vote I cast was in the House of Representatives probably 8 or 10 years ago, and it was probably close to 4 a.m. Yeah, that was probably my latest one. I've never literally pulled an all-nighter, but I have gone home and slept 2 hours and then come back.
And you were here during the turbulent Senate Bill. It was 5, right?
Yes, Senate Bill 5.
Was that the most turbulent time in your memory?
Oh yeah, by far. Yeah, that was, and thank goodness I had good relationships with my folks in Fairfield County, and that was a difficult bill, but. That's what the process is all about. That's what representative democracy is all about. We have ideas, we throw them out there, and sometimes they fly, and sometimes they get thrown back at you.
Is there anything that I have not thought to ask you?
Gosh, we've hit the role of family, hit the role of supporters. I think maybe just to amplify a little bit, I like to encourage a lot of people to get involved in politics. I've even had people tell me, no, that's dirty. I don't want to get involved in that. Politics is not dirty. Let's not let the 1% of human nature ruin it for the rest of us. We need good people in politics. We need good people both running for office as well as supporting those who run for office. Now in my case, I'm not going to keep you out all night till sunrise doing yard signs. I'm not sure I can do that anymore. But, we need good people out there supporting good people as well as running for office. And get started by talking to a local mentor of yours, your local legislator or a county commissioner or mayor or council person. We got some really bright, honorable, godly people out there serving. Go find a couple of them and latch on to them.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time here.
Well, thank you.
And
this is an honor.
Very, very much. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you again. This is Reverend Thomas Wise. I've been interviewing Senator Tim Schaffer. And by God's grace, Representative soon to be.
Thank you.
By God's grace. In his office here at the Ohio State House, and the show is called Politically Wise, and I'm your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Thank you for listening today. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Now, here's your blessing.
Blessings based on Psalms 5, verses 1 through 12. Blessings on you when the Lord hears your cries. Blessings on you when you take no pleasure and evil. Blessings on you when the Lord straightens your ways. Blessings on you when the Lord wraps his favor around you.